Lord, I thank you so much for this morning, for us to get to worship in your presence. Lord, would this time be a continuation of our worship? Would you be pleased? Amen. So, over the semester, we've been talking about intimacy, being closer with God and others, and giving access to the inmost parts of who we are. This morning, we're going to be asking the same question. What if the grass is actually greener? What if what God has designed and intended is actually better than what we've settled for? Over the next three weeks, we're going to continue talking about intimacy, but focusing on intimacy with ourselves. What does it look like to deeply know ourselves and to give ourselves access to the inmost parts of who we are? The question this morning is, what if the grass is actually greener? What if my feelings are actually safer than numbness? What if my feelings are actually safer than numbness? If we were to take a poll of this room, I believe we get a few different responses to feelings. Some of us love feelings. Morgan is one of them. They're how we choose to understand and perceive the world around us. They are some of the biggest motivators for our actions and help us make a lot of our decisions. And on the other side of the room, we have some folks who really dislike feelings. We don't trust feelings. We choose not to give them much weight because we've seen them misused or manipulated, and we don't trust them. And they've caused harm. And some of us simply don't know how we feel about feelings. And that's okay. That's A-okay today. I would venture to say that no matter where we fall on this spectrum, at least once in our lives we've been asked, how are you feeling? And our response has been, I don't know, fine, I guess. What if knowing our feelings was actually safer and better than the numbness of the I don't know? Whenever I'm pondering deep theological questions such as, what if my feelings are actually safer than numbness, I often turn to Disney. And the Lord, of course, but in this scenario, we talk about feelings. I had the classic 2015 film Inside Out come to mind. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that film. If you're not, it tells the story of a young girl named Riley. She moves from the Midwest to San Francisco, and her emotions try to help her navigate this new life change. I'd like to share a clip from the film. We're going to be jumping in right at the beginning, like Riley is born beginning. And in this clip, we're going to meet the emotions that live inside her head. So each emotion is given a name and a role in Riley's life. So here we go.
It was amazing. Just Riley and me forever. For 33 seconds.
I'm Sadness.
Oh, hello. I'm Joy. So, can I just, if you could, I just want to fix that. Thanks. And that was just the beginning. Headquarters only got more crowded from there.
Very nice. Okay, looks like you got this. Very good. Oh, that's sharp turn. Ah, look out!
That's Fear. He's really good at keeping Riley safe.
Easy, huh? How about? Oh, we're good. We're good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we're back.
Here we go. All right, open.
This looks new.
Think it's safe?
What is it?
Okay, caution. There is a dangerous smell, people. Hold on, what is that?
This is disgust. She basically keeps Riley from being poisoned, physically and socially.
That is not brightly colored or shaped like a dinosaur. Hold on, guys. It's broccoli! Yeah! Well, I just saved our lives. Yeah, you're welcome.
Riley, if you don't eat your dinner, you're not going to get any dessert.
Wait, did he just say we couldn't have dessert?
That's anger. He cares very deeply about things being fair.
So that's how you want to play it, old man? No dessert? Oh, sure. We'll eat our dinner right after you eat this.
Right. Here comes comes an airplane.
Oh, airplane. We got an airplane, everybody.
And you've met Sadness. She... I'm not actually sure what she does. And I've checked, there's no place for her to go, so she's good. We're good. It's all great. Anyway, these are...
Great. I feel like if someone told me I couldn't have dessert, I would be like anger. So, anyway, I like this clip because everyone is given a role except for Sadness. We're not really sure what she does, as Joy says. As the movie progresses, we see that Sadness does actually have quite a significant role to play, that she's a vital part of Riley's emotions. Now, there are several ways that we as humans choose to engage with our emotions. Today, I will be looking at just one way we can interact with our emotions, focusing on this idea that as an independent, wanna-be tough, skin thick as nails kind of culture, we have chosen to live in a way where sadness and really any of our emotions don't carry much weight at all. We have grown comfortable with keeping our emotions out of the equation, and because we've chosen to do that, we've restricted the intimacy we can have with ourselves and limited our emotional language. When I was a kid, I had two emotions, so I started off real strong. I was either really excited or I was really mad. Over time, I learned that people didn't like when I was mad, so yes, that was a rough time for me. But when I was little, I went on a boat for the very first time, and I was mad. To clarify, I love boats. This is me on a boat. If you have a boat and want to take me on the boat, I will be excited. I will not be mad. But when I was little, it was my first time on the boat, and the reason that I was so upset was because I had to wear a life jacket. So I screamed to have that thing taken off. And I happened to embarrass my parents in front of their friends who had invited us out onto their boat. And I also managed to irritate the driver of the boat. So he pulled over into this cove, turned off the engine, picked me up, and threw me in the water. He just chucked me overboard off this boat. And so I am in the water, I pop up, and I am just smiling away. I'm having a grandest time because I realized what the life jacket was for. And I said, this is great. But before I was in the water, when I was upset and trying to express how I was feeling, I saw the people around me become embarrassed, upset, and frustrated. And so me expressing my anger made other people feel uncomfortable, and I felt ashamed. And I think there are several instances in my life where expressing my anger left me feeling ashamed. So I settled for only feeling excited. I said, I'm not gonna feel these difficult things, I'm gonna be numb to them. In the words of Hermione Granger, I had the emotional range of a teaspoon. And that's how I lived my life. As I got older, I started to believe that having any difficult emotion was unchristian. And so my teaspoon of excitement was gonna have to cut it. But what if my feelings are actually safer than numbness? In Isaiah, we see that Jesus felt sorrow and rejection, but he also feels hope. We're going to be reading from Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 3 today. It says, "Who has believed our message? To whom has the Lord revealed his powerful arm? My servant grew up in the Lord's presence like a tender green shoot, like a root in dry ground. There is nothing beautiful or majestic about his appearance, nothing to attract us to him. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest grief." So Isaiah is a book of prophecies, and this chapter is continuing the prophecy of the Messiah, Christ. The first two verses speak to the unexpected nature of Jesus. He didn't come in a big show. Mary didn't make him his own baby Instagram account. He came humbly, nothing to attract us to him. This passage also talks about plants. Jesus is being compared to a tender green shoot. I don't know really anything about plants, but I know enough to know that a root in dry ground is probably a bad sign. When I think about dry ground, I immediately think of the desert and the dry, harsh conditions that are there. And if I were going to pick a plant to be in the desert, I would choose something more along the lines of a cactus. That seems like a safer bet. I think this passage, wrong part. I don't think this passage is talking about surviving in the desert. This passage is talking about being in the Lord's presence. So I think one of the reasons why Jesus is being compared to a tender green shoot is because his environment is safe. He's in the Lord's presence, and there's no need to be a cactus there. In the Lord's presence, we are safe to be tender and vulnerable. And I think that's what Jesus embodies. When I look at the life of Jesus, I don't see him living bound by limited emotional language. His tenderness allowed him to experience an emotionally diverse life, a life that far surpasses the volume of a teaspoon. We see him feel compassion in Matthew 9, when Jesus sees the crowds and how they are like shepherdless sheep. In John 11, we see him grieve, weep, and feel troubled when he sees Mary weeping over the death of Lazarus, and he joins her in that. We see him tired and hungry in John 4 after his journey to Samaria. We see him frustrated and angry in Mark 11 when he sees the temple being misused. And we see him delight in Matthew 19 when he gets to be with children. And there are so many emotions scattered throughout the Gospels. This is how I know it's okay to feel, to let every emotion carry weight in our souls. Jesus' lifestyle breaks my childhood belief that there are good emotions and bad emotions. Jesus' life leads me to believe that no emotion is off limits, that we have freedom to feel. So we have permission and freedom to feel. How do we know if it's actually safer or better than numbness? Well, let's look back at Inside Out. During the climax of the film, Riley decides to run away from home. And the reason that she decides to do this is because she's taking control away from her emotions. She chooses numbness and the control panel goes black. Her emotions no longer have the ability to help her understand and interpret and process what is happening in her world. Riley skips school, she packs a bag, and goes to a bus station in the middle of the night in a new foreign city. So the result of numbness leads Riley to start making choices that are unsafe and potentially harmful to her. The Lord made us with feelings. Feelings are indicators that show us what we need, that help us to understand what we're experiencing. To disregard something that the Lord has made puts us in an unsafe position. Peter Scazzaro describes feelings like this. To feel is to be human. To minimize or deny what we feel is a distortion of what it means to be image bearers of God. To the degree that we are unable to express our emotions, we remain impaired, that we are unable to love God, others, and ourselves well. To cut emotions out of our spirituality is to slice off an essential part of our humanity. If I choose to stay in numbness, I am actively choosing a teaspoon-level life. Numbness hardens my whole heart. While numbness might keep me from feeling hurt, sad, and disappointed, it also keeps me from fully feeling joyful and delighted and hopeful. When I chose numbness over feeling uncomfortably ashamed of my anger, I cut off an essential part of my humanity. I took on the role of judge and deemed something the Lord calls good and said otherwise. I want to give my emotions and feelings weight. How much weight do I give them? Dallas Willard says that feelings make excellent servants but terrible masters. Feelings make excellent servants but terrible masters. So I have 3 thoughts on how our feelings can be our servants and not our masters. My first thought, monitor what you are feeling throughout the day. I know that this can be tricky. Where do we even start with something like naming an emotion? I encourage us to look at a feeling wheel. For example, this feeling wheel. It's not an all-encompassing of every emotion, but for people who've grown accustomed to a limited emotional language, this can be a great starting point for helping us articulate more specifically the things that we're feeling. Maybe ask, why am I feeling this way? What might be causing me to be feeling this emotion? My second thought is allow yourself to feel any emotion. Scandalous. This can also be tricky. Some emotions seem really big and scary, and if we chose to feel them, we would be overwhelmed. And sometimes our emotions seem so small and little that we choose to call them insignificant. Mm-hmm. I think, and what I've seen in my own life is when I actively keep a pulse on all my emotions, big and small, I can live in more freedom. My emotions help me understand what I might be needing or craving. When I allow myself to feel a wider range of emotions, my head and my heart feel in better alignment. My actions are not the result of my emotions being my master, but can be more intentional and thoughtful because they are serving me. My last thought, don't react to an emotion. Now, what I mean by this is that we aren't allowing our emotions to dictate or determine our every action. We want to respond thoughtfully and intentionally to the emotions that we are experiencing. If we reacted to every emotion that we ever felt, our actions could be quite reckless and spontaneous. If someone hurt our feelings in the moment, we can justify saying something hurtful back because of the pain that they just caused. We can quickly approach the line or even cross the line when our emotions have the reins. Living a reactionary lifestyle is what it might look like to be a slave to our emotions. So by choosing to react to an emotion, by responding with care, we can use our emotions as servants. In verse 3 of Isaiah 53, we see that Jesus is a man acquainted with grief. To quote it specifically, deepest grief. Why did Jesus not shield himself from uncomfortable feelings? I think it's because sadness has a role to play. And inside out, sadness is the emotion that helps Riley feel peace. When Riley finally allows herself to feel sad, she more accurately knows the things that she needs, and she's better able to understand the world around her. I think part of why Jesus chose to be acquainted with the deepest grief was because he knew it would acquaint him with the greatest hope. Mm-hmm. We've lived believing that showing or expressing our emotions is weakness, that our comfort takes priority. Jesus lives the exact opposite of this. His power looks like him grieving in the garden, and his comfort went out the window when he was on the cross. Jesus' emotionally rich and diverse life was amazing because he gave himself access to the inmost parts of who he was. I've experienced just how life can be when I allow myself to be intimate with my own soul. I felt the weight of grief and sadness, of anger and hurt, and of shame and guilt. Really allowed myself to feel them, to recognize them and give them space. I gave myself access to the things happening inside me, and I had to walk through difficulty. But in the same way I had to do that whole process with the hard emotions, I got to do that with the lighter ones and more fun ones too. I allowed myself to feel the lightness of feeling free and joyful, of being goofy and satisfied, of feeling present and worthy. And stepping into this intimacy brought about richness I hadn't experienced, a joy and a freedom I didn't know I craved. The reality is we're going to feel difficult emotions, but while we're there, Jesus is going to be in the puddle with us. And we're also going to feel wonderful emotions, and while we're there, Jesus is going to dance with us in the celebration. We're also going to feel less intense, everyday emotions, and Jesus is going to be there with us on those days too. We're never alone in our feelings. Jesus is right there with us, walking with us, as we learn what it means to feel and give ourselves access to the inmost parts of who we are. So at Storehouse, we value taking time to reflect and discuss as a community. So we have some questions that we're going to be chatting about in a few minutes. Question 1, how do you typically feel about feelings? Are feelings something you typically are in tune with? Or are they part of you that you struggle to connect with? Either way, being able to identify where we're starting with feelings might be helpful in growing in our intimacy. Our second question is there emotion from the feeling wheel that you identify with? And how do you think God is trying to meet you there? So if we are treating our feelings as indicators, then the emotion that stands out from the wheel might be a way for the Lord to be communicating with us. God might be trying to show us what we need.